Hi, I'm going to begin my talk with a quote, I'm embarrassed to say, from a doctoral student, not in quantitative psychology, but another area of psychology in our department that tells me where we might be, even though we have a very strong quantitative program. The quote is telling a student of mine in health psychology who wanted to study a phenomenon, it's very difficult to get this phenomenon. We only get significance once in 20 to 25 times. Yes. I did not allow her to work on that problem. Okay, and the little arrow at the front is the mover? The one I pressed is at the front? Oh, this is the right button. Okay, so I want to think about all of this at the end of the day, and Steve often says you are a very dark lady, and I'm wearing black. But I'm very concerned that what is in this room is remarkable, and what's been said today is remarkable. And how is it going to get out there? And that's what I'm going to talk about. My goals in my presentation are to explore aspects of the magnitude of improving training. I'm going to show you data that just tells you how many psychology departments there are in the US. And I'm going to show you data from another American psychologist article I was involved in that came out last year on the undergraduate curriculum, looking at, in part, courses and requirements at the undergraduate level. I want to explore the labor force for teaching statistics and quantitative methods. I want to look at who is hired to teach statistics and quantitative methods, and I want to talk about the production of quantitative psychologists. I want to touch for just a moment about training resources for innovation in quantitative instruction. The kinds of things that were said today, do they get into broad general access to training? And I want to open a dialogue as this day ends for us to all address how our field can enliven and improve teaching of statistics and quantitative methods. We've had this, as I said, incredible day of teaching innovation. You know who you are, so I don't have to read this to you. And it ends with a little bit of a dark note. I hope I didn't do this to Steve, on failures to continue the teaching of research methods. But my personal observation about our conference organizer, Joe Rodgers, and the participants of today are you all are scholars in methodology. We have a bunch of editors and past editors in the room. We have breathtaking teachers. And the presenters today are not typical of teachers of methods who populated our Ph.D. programs, and they are certainly not representative of individuals who teach undergraduate statistics in departments of psychology. Now, why this picture? This is the beginning of sunset in Sedona, Arizona. This will keep you awake, and there'll be a picture of something from Arizona each time I go to a new goal. This works for keeping people awake during statistics presentations. I bring it here. So the first thing I said I would do is explore aspects of the magnitude of the task of improving statistics and quantitative training. And what we're going to do is look at the number of psychology departments and course offerings. Okay, this is from an article that I was involved in that came out last year in American Psychologist on the undergraduate curriculum. This was done with the Education Directorate and the Board of Educational Affairs of APA. And I drew the sample from the Carnegie Foundation database in 210 of accredited colleges and universities. There are in all, in 210, about 3,000 departments of psychology in the US. 1,000 are associate degree only, but we don't throw them under the bus because we have the issue of a literate population, and we also have the issue of many students coming for their third and fourth years and into graduate school and into the field from these junior colleges. We have, in fact, 800 programs that are bachelor's degree only, and I'm going to talk about who's hired there. And then we have another 700 with bachelor's and master's degrees, and under 300 PhD programs. But that's kind of the field that learns statistics one way or another in the psychological context. Now, what are the methods courses that we found to be taught in baccalaureate programs? 100% of our responding programs reported that they taught a research methods course. 65% of all respondents, this is a subset of the 100%, said we have this course with a lab. Psychological testing and assessment, 67% of all undergraduate programs, undergraduate curriculum reported having such a course, 95% statistics, and one thing that stunned me was that almost 40% of undergraduate programs reported having an advanced statistics course. I will say that the research methods courses are typically ones that teach a little experimental psychology or doing surveys and how to write articles in APA style. So not what Steve was talking about. Now, let's look at the requirements. What is required versus elective, or from a Chinese laundry list. This is one that really surprised me. 31% of all departments that offered an advanced undergraduate statistics course required that course. So we have 40% of departments offering the course and 30% of those requiring the course, and that's over 10%, which is really surprising when you think of the whole field of the departments of psychology. Now, you all have azaleas over here, and you have forsythia, and daffodils, and narcissus, and we have the desert in bloom. Okay, so let's, with that picture to wake you up, explore the labor force for teaching statistics and quantitative methods. I'm going to ask part A, who is hired to teach statistics and quantitative methods? I'm answering that question by taking all the job postings from the Association for Psychological Science from September 1st, 1916 through March 16th, 2017 from the APS Employment Network. And I want to thank APS for my making contact with them 10 days ago as I emailed Joe saying, I don't have the data, I don't have the jobs. And they sent them to me within 5 days in a codable fashion. And I thank the Director of Marketing and Communications, and I thank APS for doing that. And I will tell you what I saw. I'm going to present portions of job advertisements, but I'm not going to name schools, with 2 exceptions in the whole talk. What is the prevailing model that I saw? I coded all of these. There are 375 jobs. I coded the jobs that had any mention of undergraduate statistics or methods, okay? And I then sorted them into those that were bachelor's degree programs, and the prevailing model is to hire a faculty member who has expertise in a substantive area, and it says, oh, by the way, contribute to the teaching of statistics and methods. I'm going to show you in rapid sequence a little bit of each of 5 ads. One wanted a cognitive psychologist or cognitive neuroscientist. One wanted someone who did experimental analysis of behavior, health psychology, mechanisms and biomarkers, industrial organizational psychology, and one wanted somebody in sensation and perception who would also teach undergraduate and advanced courses in statistics as well as research methods and have a willingness to engage in consulting for constituents across the campus and in the community. Okay? A lot of these said teach 6 courses a year. That's the job description, 5 or 6 courses a year. Now, what about the programs that had full-time baccalaureate plus a master's degree? And I found 2 such ads. Both of them were for somebody in clinical or counseling or school psychology who was able to do graduate training in clinical, who was licensed or was license eligible, and oh, by the way, had a demonstrated interest or experience in teaching statistics. Interesting combination. What about individuals hired to teach advanced quantitative courses beyond the first-year course? I'm going back to our data from the 2008 American Psychologist article. For this, we asked a question that said, if you were going to hire a quantitative person to teach graduate courses beyond the first-year sequence, what would you require their basic background to be? 2% said we require that person to have a quantitative research program. And another 4% were gracious enough to say we prefer that that person have a quantitative research program. Then we have 19% who are the whatever, okay? And then comes the truth about who's teaching graduate courses beyond the first year in PhD programs, okay? The department would prefer the person to have a substantive research program, 32%, and the department would require the person to have a substantive research program, 43%. Okay? Okay, so there's a line, every picture tells a story, don't it? That's Cleveland, but this is every table tells a bigger story, don't it? Okay, so let's have a look at some of the jobs for PhD programs, in PhD programs, to teach quantitative methods. The first one says, blah, 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 you have to have expertise in state-of-the-art, this, that, and the other, and contribute to the existing areas of strength of the department. Second says Bayesian, categorical, latent models, high-dimensional data, machine learning, or robust statistics, and must affiliate with doctoral program in either IO, social, developmental, cognitive, or behavioral neuroscience. Okay, third one says you have to complement the interest of our faculty members in human factors, IO, or health psychology. And then there's the flip, which is we want to hire an industrial organizational psychologist with a PhD in IO who has a strong quantitative interest so they can go on and teach the advanced graduate courses. Okay, so here's the Sonoran Desert in spring. We've had some rain. If we weren't walking through this beautiful campus looking at your flowering fruit trees, we'd be looking at this. Let's look at the assistant professor quantitative position. Here's a job ad from a very fine school for an assistant professor in quantitative. We want that person to publish quantitative methods research, so do basic quantitative methods research, but we want that person to make significant contributions to substantive areas, to teach the required undergraduate and graduate methods courses, to teach elective quantitative methods courses, and to consult with and advise faculty and graduate students in psychology and in other departments. And my question is, even for a very well-trained, young, energetic, quantitative psychologist hired in such a department, where's the time to develop teaching innovations for required undergraduate courses? Now, what I'm very concerned about is that many of the quant jobs are solo quant jobs. And when we've had some solo quant job experiences from some of our students, we try to have them not go to those jobs if we can, that they better go into quantitative programs. But there's a huge pent-up demand by the time a department gets to hire a solo quant person. There's no mentor or protector. We walk around saying, leave this person alone. This person needs tenure. No more committees, no more this. Let this person publish and get tenure. Heavy demands for curriculum innovation. You don't hire people to teach the old stuff, okay? Heavy demands for consulting with faculty and students. And the same expectation for level of scholarly productivity is for every area in the department at the same rank. Okay, let me give you a war story. We had a student whom we call a twofer, and we've written about the twofers. Those are people who are enormously productive and well-trained in a substantive area and double-trained in quant, and we have a lot of them at ASU. Here was his job offer in a very fine department. We want you to build a research lab and bring your substantive area. Okay, very, very good startup. We want you to innovate in the substantive curriculum, which we're lacking. That's why we like you. And innovate in the quantitative curriculum, because we don't have anybody in quantitative. Okay? We want you to produce scholarship equal to your peers in other areas. And, oh, by the way, last line, your job description includes contributing 10 additional hours a week to statistical consulting. Now, Steve and I run in the background, and we say, okay, have the following conversation with the chair. We told the student to ask the chair whether all assistant professors had to give 10 hours a week to the good of the commons. So if they were good at programming, they could program other labs. If they didn't know how to do that, they could clean rat cages. But they could do whatever would benefit the commons for 10 hours a week. And the 10 hours a week came off the desk and turned into 2 hours. But it took people running in the background, like yourselves with your students, and like we always do, to have this kind of nonsense not happen. Here's some other examples recently. a student of Steve's, asked to teach 5 new quantitative courses pre-tenure. Okay, so I did a moral high ground manipulation with her and say, but you're coming to start the quantitative program and build the training and develop graduate students, and I'm here for the moral high ground. And that went down by 1 to 4 courses. There was a new assistant professor at another solo job who was told that the endless amount of time she was spending consulting with other people could be taken out of her research time. It would count it against her research time. But there was no change in her course load. In fact, there was an increase, and there was obviously no change in her publications. She's on the job market. All right. What I worry about is this line that I've heard many times before. He or she was a great teacher, but really didn't get his or her quantitative research program going, and often showed up as a trailing author on colleagues' publications, which is part of the job description to consult. Okay. So, as we think about teaching innovation, our young hires are a great hope for teaching innovation. We go out and we want to get these people who are doing exciting new ways of teaching. But we can't put the burden of teaching innovation on our assistant professors without easing up somewhere else. And I have the question, is there a way to address this matter? So I'm looking at 2 new models in quantitative hiring programs, in Ph.D. programs, one of which I think is maybe hopeful, and the other one scares me. The first is the hiring of teaching faculty, and the second is cluster hiring with a joint appointment in a statistics department or a quantitative cluster or methods in a sort of an institute format. These are 2 things I saw in the job pool. The teaching faculty model is typically, it seems new in the job description. I understand York University did this last year for the first time. Is that right? Right. To teach undergraduate quantitative curriculum, you're hired as a lecturer predominantly to teach the undergraduate curriculum, to coordinate all of the undergraduate statistics instruction, and to have expertise in a range of quantitative methods, including statistics and psychometrics. I didn't see an ad that mentioned design. In the main, this is not a tenure track or tenure position. Now, I shouldn't be saying in the main because I only found 4 jobs, okay? First was a master teacher of Introduction to Applied Statistics. This is at University of Oklahoma, and Robert Terry's the chair of that search. Is it working? Did you find someone? Okay. Good. You can see what that job one is. The second one is Rachel Filati's department, Simon Fraser, teaching multiple quantitative courses in various areas. Then I found 2 that are non-tenure track, and these are, I'm not going to tell you the schools, but they're very, very, very prestigious, high-ranked schools, are taking all of the quantitative undergraduate instruction and handing them off to a person to teach, not part of the tenure track faculty in both instances. And I'm going to be curious to see how this goes over the years, because in a way, it separates this critical, fundamental part of the education of a psychologist and sets it off to somebody and says, take care of it. Those are my dark days that I think of it that way. On my light days, I think, finally someone will care about this. Then there's another kind of hiring, which is very distressing to me, which is the idea of the Quantitative Research Institute. So a school says we're going to have a quantitative research group, and we're going to bring together, say, social science, quantitative people who are doing bloody edge quantitative methods research. And the teaching load will be distributed between the institute and the department. And the way the department can hire is they do a call, a search, and then they propose their favorite candidate to whoever's governing the institute, which is not clear. This is a real school. And then the institute decides whether that person is interesting. So psychology found one who was doing missing data and multi-level, where everything that a psychology department was facing, if you looked at the faculty there, very strong clinical program, very strong overtime, multi-level, and this person was walking this was the person we could have designed for the job, was refused by the Institute because it didn't fit the Institute goals. Then, on the other hand, another very, very fine institution has put together a social science cluster, political science, psychology, sociology, anthropology, the whole deal, economics, and everybody has to be tenured at the associate or full professor level, okay, not babies, and have half their teaching in the Department of Statistics, okay? Now, my observation is that these joint appointments are very complex positions, and they're very complex positions for new assistant professors. And I think they should be totally reserved as the second school that I show you from the job ads for the highest ranked faculty. The hires must serve 2 masters, and joint appointments are not for the young. That's my view. Trying to stay. Now, there's another wrinkle about thinking about improving statistics in quantitative methods, is that both undergraduate and graduate PhD programs farm out their teaching to other departments. I'm site visiting a program starting on Sunday that farms out every piece of teaching of statistics through the PhD, from the undergraduate through the PhD to the stat department. Okay? There are 2 consequences. Number 1, we have no control over the nature of the instruction when the instruction is in other departments. And number 2, statistics is then taught entirely absent the context of the discipline of psychology. Another thing I'm observing that I just put at the bottom of this slide is lots of times adjuncts are hired to teach statistics, and maybe they're great, or just find somebody, we got to cover this section. Okay? This is a calm, high place. Okay, so I show that to you. Now, let me talk about the second point. Joe, I'm not going to drag this out because we have to go see good stuff, is the production of quantitative psychologists. And I'll tell you that counting the number of quantitative psychologists graduating in a year is extremely elusive, and I'm not going to go through this, but the 2 sources are really Graduate Study in Psychology put out by APA, and the second one is the iPads, or the coding that's done by IES of graduate education. And I have letters and communications from the people who've worked with those saying, these are bad databases, and it goes over a period of 11 years that I have these letters. I've been at this a while. Okay, but this is what I saw. I used the APA Graduate Study in Psychology. It's matched the list of schools against one that Mike Edwards had developed, and we came out very, very closely. It's hard to know where all the quant programs are. And it came out that in 2014, 2015, 24 PhDs in quantitative psychology were awarded, and 27 were newly enrolled. So we're kind of steady as we go. And the total enrollment in quantitative psychology programs in North America was 176. Okay? And here are poppies. These are California poppies, but they grow under saguaro trees, so we know that this is Arizona. And I want to explore very fast training resources for innovation in quantitative methods. I looked around, I didn't see them in psychology in an organized way. I saw them in ASA. I'm sure many of you are familiar with a very large initiative in statistical education in ASA. I'll skip over this, but to say that there are lots and lots of modules and lots of courses and funding from NSF for these programs, so I was intrigued by that. Sources for teaching methods, I thank Steve for mentioning the Gelman and Nolan book. It's going to come out in a new edition soon. Teaching Statistics, a Bag of Tricks, with lots and lots of organized sources of demonstrations and so on and so forth. There are tons of online resources and examples for use in class. I looked at the Nate Silver 538. It's too political right now. It's tons of programs, but I didn't know where this would be beamed out. So all the things about the popularity of our president and stuff like that, I thought I wouldn't put it here. So there are resources for enhancing statistics instruction, but they're many and varied. They're not organized. They're not evaluated, and this puts a huge burden on the new instructor of statistics to integrate new methods into statistics instruction. So I want to ask, in closing, the diffusion of innovation question. How creative methods for teaching statistics developed by quantitative experts get out into the world. So today I've been asking the, are you going to write a book about that question? I'm going to add a second question is, do faculty members with expertise in various substantive areas have the interest, the time, the energy, and the financial resources to acquire these new methods? And in closing, I'm going to ask a third question. How do we educate our students of quantitative methods in psychology? That's our own doctoral students, about how to teach statistics and quantitative methods in psychology. I think this is the next step discussion I hope we have as we have our closing today. Thank you.
This is really tough. We'd like to have about an hour or so of conversation following that excellent presentation. And yet we have conflicting activities coming up. So let's give it about 5 minutes or so. And then I have a couple of quick comments, and then we'll release all of you for the day. Rochelle.
Leona, thank you very much for bringing up the ad and raising the issues that you have mentioned. One of the strategies that we're currently using in our quant program, helping our students, is as one of their qualifying exams, they can design some modules for one of our undergraduate courses.
Oh wow, that's fabulous.
So that's very
Did everybody hear that? Raquel said that part of the qualifying exam at Simon Fraser for the PhD can be to design a module for teaching an undergraduate statistics course.
You seem to suggest that there are some sorts of jobs that probably aren't all that suitable for a new PhD. So for someone who's just starting to become a job market, what do you think there are certain kinds of positions that those people should look at?
Okay, wait, this is someone with a quantitative PhD.
Yes.
I have to, oh, sorry. I thought if I used my teaching voice it would work. We try for our quantitative PhD students to hope that they are employed in departments that have quantitative programs or are building them, okay? Best is a quantitative program that exists, and that means that they should be able to prosper in their research and also teach the exciting things that they want to teach, that they're not walking into, we need the first-year sequence, okay? And that's not always possible, and so then we go into what I talked to with the war stories of working on the negotiation to making the job realistic, okay? And we do a lot of that. All of us in our quant program do a lot of that. So to make it livable, and also to support students when it's not working. This one with the, oh, count it against, you know, count all the time you're doing consulting as part of your research time, but publish your own work. And I said, out on the job market, let's go, okay? So that's a process.
I don't believe at the high point of our methodology program at Campbell, we actually had a graduate program. We had a postdoc training program. I don't think we checked.
We had a building in methodology and evaluation.
Did we? It was all related to social. And was it so? Okay.
That quote about it shows up 1 in 25 times was from our social program. You know, when I said, oh, this phenomenon is very hard to find, it was a student trained in social psychology at ASU. They don't take it. Yeah?
So I have a question that builds on Patrick's question about the job market. So I'm a twofer. I have substantive interest and quantitative interest. How does your advice change for someone who wants to kind of do both? But it's interesting.
It's very interesting because in our quant program, we have a large quantitative PhD program. My substantive areas in health psychology. Steve has done stuff in education and retention of students in school. Kevin Grimm does developmental work. Dave McKinnon does a lot of stuff on intervention. Who am I missing? Anyway, and Mike. No, Mike, what would you say is? Mike doesn't have a substantive area.
History of science.
History, science, he's becoming a philosopher. Okay, so he will become a twofer when he passes his philosophy prelims. But I don't really know. Sometimes it works. All of our hires are one or the other. And I think the negotiation with your advisor, when you get a job that say, we're thrilled at your substantive area, and oh, you can teach quant, is in writing for the get-go how that's going to play, okay? And how it's going to get balanced, and what the tenure review is going to look like. Is it going to be in your substantive area? Is that where you should be publishing? And what are the resources for support for senior faculty for collaboration? And what is the proper startup and setup for your substantive work? Or is the deal that I'm mainly quantitative and we'd love you to teach a seminar in your area? And I think the get-go, and you're in a great quantitative program and you have a lot of people to put their fists up for you, they stand behind you, you sound like you're coming up with all these ideas, and get an offer letter that works to get you tenure. Same to you, same for all of you who will be out in the market. That's the time to get all this straight.
Okay, let's do one more, Carolyn, and then we'll move on.
The University of Illinois will have 2 such positions. The University of Illinois will have 2 positions.
There are 2 positions at the University of Illinois, and one's in psychology, one's in